On today's show, the San Diego Padres own those stupid Dastardly Dodgers, recapping another walk-off win for the Padres courtesy of Donovan Solano, and then also trade deadline. That also happened yesterday, just in case last night's excitement made you forget. Don't worry, we're going to be recapping the moves, whether or not the Padres gave up too many prospects, if this helps the team, what it says about the team's plans going forward, and a whole lot more. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Wednesday, July 31st. As always, I'm your host of Sometimes Occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiipeno, or at LO_Padres if you only want updates on the show, retweets from my personal account, not gonna lie, and then also whatever you need, updates on the show, posting the episodes every day, all that sort of stuff. You can also check out my baseball writing work over at justbaseball.com, and also check out my podcast there, Baseball versus the World, for evergreen fun baseball topics. Today's show, guys, we got to recap last night's game, and then we got to get into the trade deadline. So it's two heavy topics, and it's really thrilling. What a thrilling day for the Padres fandom, like in a lot of ways, even if you don't love the trade deadline. And I'm going to actually get into some of the responses that some of you folks did from the Locked On Padres account towards the Padres and what moves they made. You know, it was very mixed, I think, the Padres trade deadline. I'm going to give my thoughts too, and then also read some of your responses. But I think that all in all, it was just a nuts day. And I think it kind of lived up to what I had been hoping for, which is what I thought that this was going to be a really exciting deadline if you were a big baseball fan. Because while there wasn't the same star-studded, swapping of players that past deadlines have had, let's say 2021, that was the, unfortunately for Padres fans, but just as a general baseball fan, you know, that was an amazing deadline. It was Max Scherzer, it was Trey Turner, it was Anthony Rizzo, it was Javier Baez, it was Chris Bryant. There was so many guys that went all around the place, and that made it like a really exciting deadline. This one had a lot of movement, even if it wasn't a lot of stars, but I still think a lot of interesting impact players, and certainly a lot of prospects exchanging hands. If you're a Padres fan, you know what I'm talking about. So lots to talk about. But first, let me just tell you guys, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Folks, let's get into last night's game first. Those pesky Los Angeles Dodgers. And it is worth noting, as Sammy Levitt posted on Twitter, a really good important thing about this. And it's really weird to note this because it's been longer than I feel like 1,000 years since this has been the case. But by the way, Sammy Levitt, post-game and pre-game host for the Padres. If the Padres were to hypothetically win the next two games against the Dodgers, they would also hold the tiebreaker between the two teams. That means the Padres would be virtually just 3.5 games back of first place in the NL West. So yeah, these games are big. Kind of weird, right? We've never kind of approached a Padres season thinking, wow, we can win the division. It's always been about, like, can you make the playoffs and do you have a type of team that can win in the playoffs? I feel like that's always been the case. Apparently not here. So shouts to the Padres playing so well as of late that they are in a position where these games are more than they matter, not just in terms of the Padres wanting to accumulate wins and just because we want to beat the Dodgers because they're their main rival, but because it actually might have an impact on the NL West standings. So that's really exciting. And they win last night's game by a score of 6-5. So step one is done. And at first, it did not look like it was going to go well. Let's be very clear. Matt Waldron, who has been one of the great Padres success stories. I actually think I'm going to write about him for justbaseball.com soon, but he has been just a godsend in a lot of ways, and he starts off this game getting absolutely battered, and it wasn't like some other starting pitching performances we've seen from your Michael Kings and even your Matt Waldrons occasionally, where it was, wow, like a lot of singles that just broke through, right? Like, it wasn't like he was getting hit hard. He does get hit hard. He gives up a brand spanking total of 5 earned runs in the very first inning, courtesy of Gavin Lux getting a sacrifice fly after Shohei Ohtani gets on base. Andy Page is getting a single, and then Cavan, is it Cavan or Cavan Biggio. I always forget how to say his first name. Hitting a home run. That was the real dagger, because that's something that I feel like Waldren has been susceptible to every now and then, is giving up the long ball. But all in all, he's been good lately. So seeing this happen, especially for a player like Cavan Biggio, it's not like this was Shohei Ohtani or anything like that. So that was it was really unfortunate. So a bad first inning, but after that, the remainder of Waldron's start, which granted was just 3 more innings, was good. 1 walk, 6 strikeouts on the night. He looked okay. He had a really good strikeout at one point with a knuckleball inside. Like, his movement was really good, and I think that that's an important thing to note. And also important to note that even though he did give up the home runs, maybe he was due for a little bit of a higher home run fly ball rate, right? Like last night, it was lower than like 8%, right? So maybe he was a little bit due for some home runs, especially against a good lineup. So I'm not really worried about Matt Waldron all that much. I'm really not. I don't think the Padres are either. And we're going to talk about that when we get to the trade deadline. But what I think you saw is the potential of this Padres team. And the potential of this Padres team is to be a shutdown, lockdown, never have to worry about it, especially with such a good offense, bullpen. Yuki Matsui comes in, no hits, 2 strikeouts. Steven Kolek comes in, 2 walks, he does get into some trouble. My God, Kolek, I'm trying to like you. Come on, my guy, but he doesn't give up any runs. Adrian Morejon, he gets into a little bit of trouble, but works out of it after 2 walks, and a hit was surrendered, but he makes it out of it unscathed. Logan Gillespie comes in, doesn't give up any earned runs either. Jeremiah Estrada gets 2 strikeouts, and then Robert Suarez is brought in to maintain the lead in extra innings, which we get to. And if you're wondering how we got there, of course, Manny Machado, elite Manny Machado game. Let's be very clear. This was an all-time game for our guy. Not all-time. I don't know. What is Manny Machado's best game? I'm trying to think. Like, what's like the Manny Machado game? Do you guys have one? I'm just wondering. Like, if there's a Manny Machado game, if that makes sense. I don't know. But not only does he hit 2 home runs in this game, 2 solo shots, and they were big solo shots. First one coming in the bottom of 2nd inning. He also makes 2 amazing catches down the third base line heading out of bounds. Really impressive, especially considering, like, just the other day, him going for those catches on the third base line ended up resulting in the ball literally hitting him in the face. So shouts to Manny Machado with just the swagger to pull that off. And he's still an amazing player, obviously, but making 2 really nice catches out of bounds allows for 2 extra outs, and it just shows you Machado still got his defense as always. Also, in this game, Jurickson Profar got an RBI because, of course, he did. Jake Cronenworth also hit one in the bottom of the 3rd. It's amazing how quickly they fought back. This team really has that vibe of, yeah, okay, we're down by 5, but guess what? We don't have to roll over. We don't have to have the Men in Black forget this. You know, Giannis on Twitter. Like, you don't have to do that because this team's offense over and over has shown up. 2 for 2 day with Manny Machado. He hits the solo home run in the bottom of the 9th to put them down by 1. And then Jackson Merrill, who only had 1 hit on the night, but it was a big one, home run to tie it. He was amped. I've told you guys a lot of times that Merrill being a good player, being better than Trent Grisham already, not necessarily defensively, but already in total being a better player than Trent Grisham. That's not even necessarily the most surprising thing to me always. It's the attitude, it's the swagger, it's how comfortable he is for a team with so many high-profile personalities that he seems to still stand out. Hitting that home run in this one, obviously looking super jazzed. And all in all, it was, you know, not the craziest offensive game from the Padres. The only one who's able to draw some walks is Kyle Higashioka and Jurickson Profar. Profar getting 2, including an intentional walk, by the way. An intentional walk. So the Dodgers, home of Mr. Will Smith calling him Mr. Irrelevant, did not happen here, right? So shouts to him getting the 2 walks and including an intentional one in the bottom of the 10th inning that ends up setting it up for Donovan Solano. I do want to say really quickly, though, that Will Smith, I think we can get over the irrelevant comment. You know, I think it's over now. You know why it's over? Because at All-Star break, he literally came out and was like, yeah, like that was a dumb thing for me to say. Like, he kind of apologized about it. And I don't even think he needed to apologize. My thing was more just like, yeah, the idea that Will Smith and like everyone's innocent from this, everyone who's made any anyone who has made any sort of critique, I can't speak. Anyone who's made any sense of a critique, any sense of slander, has been met with vengeance almost instantaneously from Jurickson Profar this year, as evidenced by his position in high leverage scenarios this year. So shouts to him. But yeah, I'm over it now. I'm kind of over the Mr. Irrelevant thing. It's becoming a little bit like the trash can joke that everybody makes about the Astros. It's like, bro, that happened literally like 7 years ago. Can we please like move on a little bit, except for the Castellanos bit. It's the only baseball bit joke thing that I don't want to move on from. That one's amazing. But we're going to recap and finish recapping the end of this game and then finally get into the trade deadline because there were certainly some things that happened in just one moment, guys. But first, I need to talk to you about one of our sponsors. And one of our sponsors is the good folks over at the #1 daily fantasy sports app in the land. That is, of course, Prize Picks, guys. And we love Prize Picks. We've had them as a sponsor for a long time. They are the #1 app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you need to do is pick over under on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch those winnings roll in. With Prize Picks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 while watching Team USA. That's right, you could do that. Rack up the gold medals this summer. You can make a Prize Picks lineup containing of players across basketball, soccer, tennis, golf, probably beach volleyball, you know what I mean? Whatever you want and many, many more. You can pick a Prize Picks lineup of players across all of those sports in as little as just 60 seconds. And also, they've got a bunch of promotions on Prize Picks, alternating sometimes. They might have something new next month. That's right, we're almost in August. Well, not officially yet, but when we get to football, I bet you they're going to have some deals on that too. But for now, on Tuesdays, they can lower select player stat projections to help your lineup hit, or you get your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. So Prize Picks, they got all the options for you folks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with Prize Picks. And just like that, folks, we are thriving and vibing back into the second segment of the Locked On Padres podcast. Again, just a dream of a team. What can I say? In the bottom of the 10th inning. And again, it needs to be emphasized that I like that the Padres bullpen, on top of the additions that they made, which we're going to talk about in just one second, on top of the additions they made, it means that you're probably going to be able to see the team be a little bit more lenient, be a little bit more liberal with its usage of its top level arms. They're not going to have to be like, it's the 7th inning, we want to save Estrada and Suarez for tomorrow. No, if the best players are in the lineup of the opposing team and you want to bring in your, even a Monajon or Estrada or Suarez, you can do that because you have faith that the Padres bullpen is better, and you're not going to have to rely on Anil De Los Santos, who, by the way, was sent to the Yankees, or, Wandy types and Kolek types in these high leverage situations, even Yuki Matsui types. That's a huge, huge plus for this bullpen. And you saw it with Robert Suarez getting the 2 strikeouts, and that was not an easy situation. As everybody knows, the extra innings rule with the zombie runner on second. Really good stuff from the Padres. And then, of course, in the bottom of the 10th, Kyle Higashioka, who I'm starting to wonder, guys, is this just who he is? Is he just going to be an above average bat? I'm starting to wonder because this guy keeps getting enough hits like every single weekend, or every single game, I should say, every single series, to justify having him as the starting catcher. He's still got a 123 WRC plus this season. I never thought that this was going to happen. I told you, I like the Higgy move because I thought that he was an elite backup catcher, not necessarily a starter. But he's hitting, man, right? He's got 12 home runs and he's slugging. He's getting a lot of extra base hits. He's .520 slugging percentage this year. He hasn't had that high since 2020 in a shortened season where he only played 16 games, right? So, I don't know, but I like it. He draws a walk here, and then Luis Arraez does lay down the sacrifice bunt, which I loved, by the way, because while, yes, I understand that Arraez is your guy for getting your singles and whatnot, and he does get a double in this game, still only 1 for 4 from him, and he does grind into another double play. 17, I believe, on the year for him. I'm actually going to type that in right now. He's susceptible to the double play ball, very susceptible to it. So I'm glad that they used him as a sacrifice there. Every now and then I am a fan of bunting, and he executed it very, very well, allowing for the absolutely iconic, the absolutely legendary, the man, the myth, the legend. No, I'm just kidding. Not just yet. Not just yet, guys. Donovan Solano does not come up just yet. But the other legend is Jurickson Profar. He draws a walk. Donovan Solano is sent in to hit for Jake Cronenworth. And I know you guys might be wondering, why the heck did they do that? What were you thinking? Are you a lunatic? Well, it was a lefty that they were going up against, Alex Vesia, and that's why. And Jake Cronenworth has not been very good, not just this year, but throughout his whole career against lefties. So that was a really smart move from our guy, Mike Schill. And what happens? Donovan Solano rips one down the left field line, Game winner, Padres win, another walk-off. Great call by Don Orsillo, by the way. Absolutely loved it. Really good stuff. Never gets old. This has been such a dream of a team. By the way, the Arise thing, yeah, 17 double plays he's grounded into this year. He had 18 all of last year, so keep an eye on that. It's been one of the problems for why he's been not so great with the Padres. Some really untimely double plays for him this year. But it's just been amazing, man, watching this team. The complete opposite of last year, as predicted by your boy. Clutch factors in baseball, especially when your roster doesn't change too much in your lineup, does not tend to happen year to year, especially to the degree that it happened last year for the Padres, right? And I just want to give a shout out that Donovan Solano, again, I really feel like we need to give this guy even more credit. They picked this guy up off the scrap heap, and you might be thinking, well, we've had bad luck with some of these old veterans. Yeah, but Donovan Solano, the difference between him and your Carpenters, your Rich Hills, your Nelson Cruzes, the difference is, and Robinson Canoes, right? The difference is that wasn't bad last year. So I'm really shocked that Donovan Solano was a free agent. It's kind of crazy that they were just able to sign this guy to a minor league deal, and he's produced really well. And by the way, he's actually been a little bit better than Luis Arraez at times. Like, he's been really solid. I know he doesn't give you too much defensively, but 123 WRC plus. He's hitting 303 on the season. You can't ask for more. So Padres offense across the board, just absolutely epic. And this is one of the reasons why I was not super bullish on the Padres trying to give up a lot of stuff in order to get another bat, because Tatis might still be coming back, and even if he isn't, Xander Bogaerts, Manny Machado, Donovan Solano, Higgy, all these guys, this lineup has been awesome, basically across the board, with the exception of Jake Cronenworth. He's been in a bit of a bad slump lately, and we haven't really talked about it because I guess I'm just hoping by not talking about it it'll get better. But 720 OPS in June and 601 in July right now, so he's regressing heavy right now. Hopefully he can figure it out, but again, we'll have to see. Let's talk about the trade deadline. So the Padres made three major trades, I'd say. Three major important ones worth discussing, right? And that was, of course, Jason Adam was the first one. They gave up Dylan Lesko. They gave up Graham Pauley. They gave up Homer Bush. That was viewed as a big-time slew of prospects that went away for a reliever. Now, one thing that you can say about that was that, well, he was under club control. You actually had a reason for why you had to give up extra, type of guys. And Jason Adam, oh my God, guys. Jason Adam has been really, really good for a while now. He's got a really good strikeout rate. His whiff rate is incredible. His slider is incredible. He's very good, right? He's very, 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 very good. But, of course, that's the thing, is that you have to look at this in a situation of, well, let's still take a look at what the Padres gave up in total. And in total, they also acquired the big kind of blockbuster, I guess, move that you'll call it, Tanner Scott, the all-star closer from the Marlins. Easily the number one reliever that was available on the deadline is a Padre. However, boy, did they give up a lot. They also, by the way, I think it's worth pointing out, they also got a righty in Bryan Hoeing, who's got a little bit of control, and he's okay, based on at least the peripheral numbers. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know too much about Bryan Hoeing, but again, just the exterior numbers, 2.7 ERA, that's pretty good. He has a lower walk rate than last year, 7.3%, doesn't miss a lot of bats, 20% strikeout rate. His expected ERA is 5.35, but his FIP is 3.26 and his xFIP is 3.44. So there's probably some middle ground where he's just an okay reliever, right? And at least he's not giving up a lot of home runs. Maybe they see something in this guy. Maybe they don't. Maybe they think he's just fluff. But Tanner Scott, he's the exact opposite. This guy's been a strikeout machine. He's been awesome this year, and there's a reason why you were hearing his name for a while. But the Padres gave up a lot, folks. I mean, a lot. They gave up left-handed pitching prospect and the Padres' number 2 overall prospect, according to MLB.com at least, Robbie Snelling. They also gave up our boy Adam Mazur, number 4 prospect, and they also gave up Jay Bashirs, and they also gave up Graham Pauley, my boy, who I'm convinced can still be an interesting major league hitter. Maybe not now, and I still don't like how they handled him early on in the year, but yeah, that is quite the haul. The Padres also, one more thing, they got Martin Perez from the Rangers in exchange for Ronaldus Jimenez, Dominican Summer League guy. Also, they traded away Santos. I mentioned that. They got Brandon Lockridge, outfielder from the Yankees, who's in AAA. And they also gave up Thomas Bologna Jr., who's in Single A. So nothing much. The last trade is the easiest to discuss. That's Santos. To me, that was clearly, first of all, good that you got something for him. considering that you probably didn't want to keep him anyway, considering that he might have even been sent down even if they didn't make big moves, right? That they might have just sent him down because they want to call up some of their relievers from the farm system to see if they have anything. But yeah, that's the easiest one to recap. They were going to get rid of him anyway, so you got something for him. So good on Preller. Let's talk first about Tanner Scott. I think the way to view this trade deadline, and I want to first recap, right, what I've been saying before, which is that I'm not saying that this Padres team won't make the playoffs. What I've been saying is that you have over and over completely supplemented your farm system in exchange for major league talent. Now, I appreciate the aggressiveness. There are a lot of other teams that do nothing. I'm not trying to say that the Padres are some sort of idiotic team and whatnot, right? It's not that. But I do really think that this is, once again, you trading your farm system. I know a lot of you guys are going to say, well, these guys are good. They're really good players and all that stuff. And we don't know what the farm system's going to be. But you like to have reinforcements. You like to have flexibility. Because who knows what other name is going to come along. And who knows what kind of replacements you may need. What if one of your prospects doesn't turn out well? What if, next year Luis Arraez is a mess? Or what if Jackson Merrill's not as good and you wish that maybe Homer Bush makes a leap and then you want to have him potentially in the mix? I don't know. I'm spitballing, don't have any notes down in this particular area. But for me, I just see, that's a lot. Given some of the returns, I will defend the Padres in this regard. Given some of the returns that teams got for pitchers, Yusei Kikuchi, I can't believe how much the Astros gave up for him based on their prospect rankings. Carlos Estevez, the Phillies gave up a lot. Obviously, the Padres with Jason Adam. For starters, Trevor Rogers. Although I do think that part of the Trevor Rogers trade, who, by the way, was sent to... Hold on. Who the heck traded for Trevor Rogers? Hold on, let me see this really quickly. I'm forgetting who got him just now. To the Orioles. Thank you, to the Orioles. He went for a decent amount. They gave up one of their interesting prospects over there from the Orioles. Although, admittedly, I think part of the reason that the Orioles had to give up a lot is because it was a product of the Orioles having so much that, other teams are going to be like, dude, we're not settling for your back ends. You literally have enough amazing prospects to be able to trade us something good. So I think that's what happened there. But what makes the Padres interesting here is that I think that their biggest moves were clearly Cease and Arraez. And maybe it's just that we would have viewed this as an amazing, insane Padres deadline if Arraez and Cease had been acquired at this time, right? Now, I will say, if you don't acquire especially Cease beforehand, we don't know where the team is. But I'm just saying, all in all, it was a very seller's market heavy deadline. I understand that. But even still, right? I just feel like this was a lot to give up. And we're going to talk more and more about that. Keep diving in just a second, guys. But first, I want to take a moment to talk to you about the exact opposite of daily fantasy gambling. No. We're talking about something that you don't have to gamble with, something that is going to help you for sure. You don't have to worry about all the hassle and stuff. That is the good folks over at Supply House. Let me tell you, you can order supplies from the place that's made for the skilled trades. Find thousands of parts from hundreds of brands in just a couple clicks over at supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com gives you 24/7 access to a huge selection of plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with fast delivery anywhere in the U.S. Need help with an order? Don't worry. You can get industry-leading after-sales service advice from their friendly and knowledgeable customer support team and talk to a real person every time. And there's great news for the plumbers and all you skilled trades folks out there. Being a pro has its perks. Trade industry professionals can join the free Trade Master program for free shipping and serious discounts on every order. Over 100,000 pros already trust the Trade Master program to deliver results. Apply for your membership today and get a competitive edge on every order at supplyhouse.com/TM. TM being for Trade Master. Duh. Nice and easy for you guys. We love that. Save money and time when you order online. Order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service with Supply House. And just like that, everybody, we're back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, and there's not another second to lose. We got to keep talking about this trade deadline. There's a couple things I want to talk about. So first of all in all, the Padres essentially traded 7 of their top 15 prospects or so for relievers. And in the case of one of them, who is the best one, I understand, it's a rental. You had to give up Robbie Snelling, who's not just the top pitching prospect for the Padres that was remaining, but also a top-level prospect in baseball for a rental closer reliever. Obviously, this says two things. there are two major things that I take from this. Number one, Padres are going to have, actually, three things. Number one is Padres are going to have an awesome bullpen. Adding Jason Adam and Tanner Scott is going to be nuts because then it means you can use less of your bad relievers and more of your good ones. As simple as that, right? And I even think Bryan Hoeing could be at least interesting. Maybe that's why they had to give up so much. But there's another thing here. And it's what we've always known. AJ Preller clearly has to be on the hot seat if this team doesn't make the playoffs. Otherwise, why are you giving up so much for a rental closer? At least Jason Adam you can point to and say, hey, what if this guy's good for a long time? And also we've got him for another like 400 years, right? So at least you could point to that. But this is a rental closer. You could argue, depending on who you go to, that the Padres gave up more for Tanner Scott than they did for Dylan Cease, right? Because at least Dylan Cease, they didn't have to give up their top-level pitching prospect. Did they give up some stuff? Sure. What is it, Victor Lazaraga? No, I'm getting mixed up with who they gave up. Drew Thorpe was one of their top pitching prospects, but even he wasn't as highly regarded in terms of the potential of a Robbie Snelling and a Dylan Lesko. I understand moving Lesko because Lesko looks like it's going to be a little bit longer. He's got a lot more to work on. Snelling's a guy that might have been relevant next year. So that leads to the third point. The third point is that this, in my opinion, tells you, I hope it tells you, because if it doesn't, then I don't know what the heck. This would be like an F trade deadline, that the Padres are pretty confident that Yu Darvish and Joe Musgrove, one or two of them, might be back and they'll be able to contribute and help this team get over the hump and get into the playoffs. Or it means that, well, it could actually mean both, or Dylan Cease and Michael King, they're looking to extend those guys beyond this year. Because for you to once again kill your farm system, guys, there's a situation where by the end of next year, the only pitchers that they have under control are Joe Musgrove, Yu Darvish, and Matt Waldron. Now, that's not the worst trio to have, but they're only getting, we have injury concerns with Joe Musgrove. Darvish is only getting older, and Matt Waldron has still just been good this year. It's not like he's a lock-in, number 3 starter that we're always going to be able to trust. So that's pretty scary, right? So it tells me that they better have some backup plans. And if they don't have backup plans, then it's just Preller saying, fine, I wasn't able to trade DeVries and I wasn't able to trade Salas, so that's what we got to live with. I was disappointed that the team couldn't get Jack Flaherty. I really would have liked that because I don't think it would have cost as much to acquire. And you could have just said, okay, don't worry about extensions. Don't worry about anything. For the rest of this year, it does not hurt our salary and our flexibility. But I will say, and in fairness, the Dodgers did give up, I think, their number 3 ranked prospect in the trade for Jack Flaherty. So it's not like he cost nothing. Maybe the Tigers were being annoying and they said, give us DeVries or you don't get Flaherty. And if that's the case, then I don't want him. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want him. It was a weird market. It really was. A friend of mine actually texted and was like, so are the Padres ever going to get rid of AJ Preller? Because this man just keeps getting rid of the farm, but then they might be in a situation where they have no choice but to keep him because he's also really good at building back the farm system. So he was just like, are they trapped with him? And I was like, yeah, AJ Preller is almost like the Joker, where like the Batman just can't kill him. We just can't get rid of him no matter what. You know what I mean? He always comes back. That's what it feels like in this case. And there's a reason for that. It's because, well, if you read comics, those two clearly like thrive off each other and, they love each other practically, right? That's what I think happens with the Padres and Preller, where it's like we hate him, and then it's like, but I can build up the farm, so they have no choice but to keep him. So all in all, I do think that it's a tricky deadline to look into. I will say I am blaming the Minnesota Twins. I had heard from somewhere that they apparently had a deal in place for Flaherty, but ownership said no. So this is your annual daily, I should say, reminder that Javier will always get on his soapbox and remind you that owners are the worst, and this is why you can't exclusively blame the Dodgers for getting all the stars. There's another team that is a contender, by the way, that literally wouldn't do it, probably because ownership was like, no, that's too much to give up, and also he costs $18 million for this year, so we can't do it. I'm just saying, guys, it's not just that the Dodgers are, that they're the only ones that can do certain things. They are by result of other owners and other teams not doing anything. Look at Cleveland. Cleveland's big move yesterday was like, for who was it? I forgot what the pitcher was that they got. Like an okay starting pitcher that's going to be fine, I guess. And it's like they literally lead their division. And that's all they're doing. So just saying. All in all, though, I think this is a C deadline personally for the Padres, because for you to give up, like I said, 7 of your top 15 prospects, for it to be arguable that you gave up more for a rental reliever, that to me is just not great from Preller. I do think it makes the team great for this year, but it has me worried because you're getting rid of a lot of depth that the team may need in the future. And I've said many times before that this team, to me, I know that they've been great lately, but they were also great 2 weeks before the All-Star break, by the way. And remember how they lost all those games and they were right back where they started? This team didn't show me that I'm ready to fully commit in it winning a World Series title or it going deep into the playoffs. We'll have to see. I love the team. I still think they can be very good. But all in all, makes me worried. It just does. And I just think that that's a lot of prospects to be giving up for any player, let alone relievers. And we all know how volatile those guys can be. Right? It wouldn't be shocking if all of a sudden they stink. I will say the Martin Perez acquisition, it had a little bit of Rich Hill energy to it, where it's like, oh crap, we need another pitcher. It did a little bit, but I don't think it's quite that bad because for one thing, Rich Hill was like 80 bajillion years old, had a much higher ERA and whatnot. I think that with Martin Perez, there's some hope maybe that he can be okay and just throw innings. And again, I think the Padres not getting another starter, not getting your... For example, a Tyler Anderson would have been nice, but frankly, based on how everybody's ripping the Angels, I think that's more of an Angels problem and their refusal to ever sell. Like, I don't know what they're doing. That is a disastrous organization. Be thankful that they aren't that. Or even a Colorado Rockies, right? So at least they're not that. I understand his numbers are not very good. 5.2 ERA this season. His expected stats are not good either. And I understand that he was amazing a couple years ago, had like the season of his career. But that was a while ago, and also his home run fly ball rate was only 6.5%, so he probably got a little bit lucky with the home run luck. I think that he can be better than Rich Hill, but that's not saying much. I'm really just desperately hoping that the Padres know something about a Darvish and a Musgrove, and they're like, these guys are going to be back, and they're going to be healthy, and they're going to at least be able to carry us into the postseason, where we will be able to have a Waldren, a Cease, a Darvish, and a Michael King. You can make a three-headed monster rotation that wins you playoff games, especially with the way that this offense is playing. And especially if you upgraded your bullpen to be, well, if we have to, if Matt Waldron stinks again, at least if he goes 5 and gives up 3, then our bullpen's going to lock it down. So I do think that from this season, it is a very solid deadline that they had. But all in all, it's a lot of prospects to be given up, man. And what has this team over and over done? Give up a lot of prospects and... not necessarily result in more consistent results. So we'll see how it pans out. And for what it's worth, your boy, I didn't say it on the show because I wasn't sure about my source. I had a source that told me that Tanner Scott might have been a Padre. I had someone who mentioned that to me. So shouts to that. That turned it out to be true. If that person tells me again about another move that they may be having, maybe in free agency, maybe down the line, then I will be discussing it, guys. Let me just conclude the podcast by reading some of your guys' thoughts on the Padres trade deadline. I asked, so all in all, what letter grade would you give the Padres deadline? From Nick Lee, he says B for bullpen. LOL. I wish they would have more seriously addressed the rotation, but hard to hate a super bullpen. Agreed. B+ from John Riley, B- from Grant Jordan, B from Dr. Kenneth Noisewater. great username, and it's the guy from what's that movie called? Anchorman. Pros: elite shutdown bullpen, kept Salas and Leota DeVries. That is fair. That is fair. And it also supports the reports that we got that apparently the organization was like, no, you can't touch those two. Who knows what that man would have done? I think Luis Robert and Garrett Crochet are Padres right now, potentially, if they let him touch DeVries and Salas. Stayed under the luxury tax. Great point. That is one point. Maybe that's why they couldn't go out and do my dream thing for Jack Flaherty, although reports say that they were interested in talking to them. Maybe that's why, and they figured it's too much for now, and maybe ownership was being stingy given the amount of salary they already have accrued. Cons: thin starting depth, thin outfield depth. Agreed. I think that you weren't able to address that, but I'm hoping that the reason they did that is because they think they're going to get a Tatis back soon, and they think that Musgrove and Darvish will be back, but we'll have to see. Din Spartacus, B. Wish we got a bit better back-end pitcher. Agreed. B, I think they have the mindset that Tatis, Darvish, and Musgrove will kind of be acquisitions. Agreed. If you're viewing it from that, guys, like, I think this is a fine deadline. But even if it isn't, that's a lot to give up. Joey Quiroga said C, so he agrees with me. I'm going to go C+, though, actually. I'll be a little bit different. Mateo, he said A. Christopher Chadwick said C. San Diego Sabine sending our beloved Emma Stone from Easy A, saying A is for awesome. Thank you, of course. Emma Stone, Padres legend. Radio H Fryer said B-. Michael Arndt said B. And then JMH says incomplete. Check back in October. This is a pass or fail class. Letter grades mid-season are mid, says my guy. Yeah, I guess. But then what's the point, right? What's the point of us even doing this podcast? Obviously, you check it at the end of results. I just think that that's lame. It's like, Yeah, but you still made the right decision then and where you were, right? It's easy to go and have 2020 vision and say, wow, what a dumb trade they made. It's like, well, they in the time it was fine. So that's what we're grading. So I disagree with you, sir. I don't like giving no incompletes. All right, don't be a coward. Come on, give a letter grade. My God, unbelievable. Disgraceful stuff from my guy. Unbelievable. I don't know why I'm getting so mad by a random Twitter responder. But last 2 letter grades were from Stitches, who said B+, and then HOZ to Moon with a B. So I think a lot of people overall a little bit higher on me, higher on this than me. I do think that you could talk me into a B-. I just can't get over how many prospects you gave up. I'm sorry. I haven't seen in a long time this much of a interest, high-level interest in bullpen arms being the story. And by the way, I don't even want to know what Mason Miller would have gone for, if not for his stupidity in breaking his hand and then landing on the IL, right? I can't even imagine what he would have gone for, because he probably would have been traded. And I think that all in all, this is still one of those deadlines that, we're going to look back at really weirdly. It kind of reminds me of, if you're a football fan, if anyone remembers that year where only offensive linemen went in like the first round, it has a little bit of that energy where it's like the biggest acquisitions were like really middling, like not the star players, right? In the case of linemen, they're not the star players, they're important, but like your Kikuchi trades, your Tanner Scott trades, your Jason Adam trades, the amount of prospects that were going around, it has the energy of when the NBA thought that there was going to be an increase in the, what's called the payroll, what's that called? Like the TV money, they were going to have a greater luxury tax, so teams overpaid for role players. That's actually a better comp. That's what this reminds me of if you're a basketball fan. And then, of course, all those contracts aged horribly because then it never went up. So that's my vibe, is this was a huge seller's market. I think the Padres in a vacuum did well with what they acquired, but I am worried still about the back-end starter thing, and I'm still worried about how much depth you once again gave up for a team that every time they do this, it hasn't always resulted in consistent wins. But nonetheless, that game last night was awesome, right? Hopefully they can win the second game of this series and then put them in a position where all of a sudden they may be able to go for that title. And yes, I am mad about Jack Flaherty going to the Dodgers, but nonetheless, we'll see how it goes. Hopefully, Martin Perez, by the way, was a little bit more of a trade acquisition than just we need innings. Maybe they see something in him, maybe. But we'll see. I hope this isn't Rich Hill again. But everybody, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow the show on Twitter at LO_Padres, or of course follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, the best handle in the game, JAVIIPENO. Until next time, stay safe and of course stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies, take care.